Hello again, it's Mart with Max Q and another J3 Cub restoration update. Today's date, there we go. We're into August already, and of course we're downrange from Oshkosh, which was fantastic time for sure up there all week, and can't wait for next year to get here. So I'm going to go over a few things on the fuselage and some things related to fabric covering, because I am literally getting started finally on the fabric covering. But before we get to all that, real quick, I wanted to say I've had some things occur here in the last week that are very encouraging for the future of this kind of work for me. It looks like I'm going to be able to do several airplanes here coming in the near future once I get this airplane done. And so that may entail trying to eventually set up a hangar and actually having an operation. So we'll see how that goes. It may just be me doing the work. But I'm hopeful maybe that I can grow it enough to where I can actually have a small shop with some extra people involved, and we could crank through a variety of aircraft fairly quickly and do a beautiful job. So that's the goal for the future. But anyway, I'm just very encouraged about that. So let's get on to looking at the fuselage in here again in the spray booth. So finally, all of those stringers are in place. So it's a little bit tedious for sure, and again I made those stringers, even some scarf joints in those to get them long enough, but they went on really well. I think they're going to work just fine. It is kind of interesting, and you'll see this kind of thing on J3 Cubs where various things have been done differently over the years. So for example, these stringers here are sitting in some of that channel stock that's used so many places on a J3. Normally though, there's just a little catch right here for the stringer, but at some point in time somebody ran the channel the full length, which is actually kind of nice though, because it adds a tremendous amount of rigidity to this area, which is a little prone to people bumping up to and leaning on. So these should be really robust. The wooden ones down here, okay, they're still a little more susceptible if somebody would put a leg into the airplane when they go to push it. So anytime with these old airplanes, it's obviously important to be cautious with the way you push and pull on them. But it is kind of nice, this up here, that it is. And the same thing with the center one down the spine, which it's not much at risk for people pushing on it, but these here at the shoulder certainly are. So anyway, those are all in place. I've got the vertical fin mounted. I also wanted to say that while I have a fair amount of the trim system in, the vertical fin, I guess that's about it as far as systems right now. I haven't gone through and done like the final inspection before I would get to the fabric point. I will be doing that. But at the moment, I think everything is installed correctly. But there's always the possibility that I will find a minor tweak that needs to be done. One of the things that you may be familiar with if you know Cubs, so there's this hole is here so that in the field, in the future, if you needed to replace the jack screw here, there's a way to get that jack screw up and out of the fuselage. But normally it's covered with fabric here, so, oops, sorry, up here. So normally this little hole is covered with fabric. There's actually a little plate that goes on here, and I have not seen the plate with this one. And in fact, when I did the Super Cub, I didn't put the plate on there either for the entire process, because if you would have to change this jack screw, and you have to cut an opening here big enough to get that plate out, and then get the jack screw out, and then of course you have to put a patch over it once you've put the new jack screw in and such. So what I did on the Super Cub was I just left that off, and you get a slight little visual indentation right here with the fabric. You know, once it's painted and everything, you can still kind of tell, but it would make that process really easy, because you would just have to cut that tiny little opening there, pop that out, and then you'd put a patch over it. So I think most likely that's the same way I'm going to do this one here. The other thing is this piece, I recessed the stringer here so that this is completely smooth and flat. So that'll be a nice smooth arc, and I'll probably be putting some tape here to feather out the thickness difference between this and the vertical fin, just to, as much as you can. I think those things really help. For example, down here, I've done some stuff with the tape to bridge between the steel that is catching the stringer and then the stringer itself. And in fact, there was a little bit of a, sorry again, details. There's a little bit of offset here, so I built the tape up even a little bit more so that this is feathered down. Yeah, sorry about the cameras, but you know. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to show that's really pretty cool is I do have the continuous trim cable here is in place. Had a new one of those made, and again, if you're interested in where to get those, you can send me an email. Email address is in the description, or not in the description for the video, but in the about page for the channel. And this was a custom made cable, just exactly the length I need, because sometimes the airframes are a little bit different over time with some changes and or repairs that have been made. So having a custom size endless cable, so again, that means there is no end, there's no visible splice to this. Basically, it can be at any position in this loop and function properly. So I got a new restoration hand crank, and because it was chromed, and I don't like shiny stuff so much, I took the walnut shells in the blast cabinet and I put a satin finish on this, and I think it turned out really good. I just think that looks so much classier than a shiny, glossy that would show fingerprints. This is very smudge resistant. So anyway, the crank turns the pulley moves the cable, and when we do that, if we look back there, you can see the jack screw is going up, which is actually nose down trim, and that's the direction I'm moving here. If we go nose up trim here, you'll notice that the jack screw assembly is going down, which is nose up trim. And so again, the cables go through the fair leads there, and it's super smooth and is working really, really well. And that's one of the ways that's adjusted, is the nut down here at the bottom holding the pulley onto the jack screw. You don't want that too tight. I played with it several times, putting just a little more tweak on it for the next hole on the castellated part for the cotter pin, and then run the crank, and a little stiff, so backed it off again. I did that multiple times to give it every opportunity to ease up, even with the tighter setting, but it never did ease up on the cranking. So that told me pretty much I needed to back off that one slot, basically, so that I have a really smooth operation going up there, but I have no slop up and down in that whole assembly. So anyway, I think that's going to work out just really, really well. You may also know that there's a little fair lead block here that the cables go through. This is just temporarily mounted at the moment. These tabs will get bent down, and then I'll probably be wrapping that as well permanently. But here's the trim indicator cable, and I mentioned it last time. It is fishing leader line. This is 90-pound test. It is a braided cable, really tiny, and then it's vinyl covered, and so it runs all the way back there to the jack screw and rides. It goes up and down with the stab, and as it does, it causes this line to get pulled, and then for return is this spring right here. Now the thing that's interesting, and I had mentioned in the last video that Clyde Smith had mentioned in his seminars to put some tubing here so you can get the line that this is pulling on, because naturally it's pulling at an angle and it wears the cover plate. But here's the thing, and I noticed this with this airplane, but I wasn't sure until I really put everything together. This is not, to my knowledge, this is not a standard channel to be sitting here. My other fuselage does not have it. and I don't remember it being on the Super Cub or the other J3 that I worked on several years back. So the trim indicator apparatus, which I've got painted with this little green here, it's on a fairly long arm that will stick out the back. There you can see it's sticking out of the back. That little hole there at the back edge is where the indicator wire will attach. And so what happens is this, let me get a better hold here. So this channel that it rides in is going to take up any of the stress of the misalignment so that it's not wearing on the cover plate. So that's a different system that somebody has worked out. It seems like it'll work out really well. So we'll see how it goes. But so obviously I don't have the indicator wire hooked up just yet. I cleaned up the throttle cable, which is not here right now, but so I'm gonna route it, and the fuel tank, I'm gonna go ahead and get it cleaned up here real soon. And so that'll, well, and then that goes along with the torque tube and floorboards. I've been working on the floorboards actually. So this is the original floorboard here, and then I've got some other floorboards that were with my other J3. That's the large one that is brand new, but I'm not going to use it either. If you've seen the other videos, you know I've got some special wood for that, but I have two different ones to use for determining the different ideas for the slots, because that's the other thing with J3s is typically the floorboards are different in every airplane. At least nowadays they are. Certainly from the factory they would have been the same. But when they get replaced over the years, minor changes are made. So I'll be using the two different sets that I have over there to determine what is going to look best and work best. The smaller the openings can be within reason, the less chance you're going to drop things down through the floorboards and get them trapped down below. So I like to try to keep things snug, but you can't have things too snug for a variety of reasons. So anyway, so here is where I'm going to do the small parts covering work. It's just a 4x8 sheet of OSB with a house sheet draped over it. But I did cut some fabric today in preparation for doing the horizontal stabilizers. And so this is for this one here, and this folded up piece then is for the other stabilizer. And along with that, soon I'll be covering the rudder as well. But as you may know, there's an AD, an Airworthiness Directive, on the rudders. And as I understand it, there's been a couple that have failed right up here. This is the upper hinge point, and of course this is the aerodynamic counterbalance of the rudder. And there was a failure that took place in this area here on two different airplanes. And so that's created quite an uproar, because there's a lot of Piper aircraft with essentially this same rudder on it. So it has affected a bunch of airplanes, but there's a variety of parameters, and you may be well aware of it. This being on a J3 and under 100 horsepower, the compliance is 10 years from the date of the AD, which was just earlier this year. So this could be put off for quite some time, but the problem with that is that you'd have to replace the rudder most likely, and that would mean recovering. So you wouldn't want to do that in the future, really, if you could avoid it, because the chances of the paint matching would be fairly slim. But there's an even better solution. So there's an AMOC that has come out. So that's an alternative method of compliance is what that stands for. So Alex Koerner has come up with a AMOC that has been approved by the FAA for repairing these rudders, and it's basically, it can be done actually with the fabric even on, because the work is done down here through the bottom by putting another piece of tubing that fits inside here, a piece of 3/4 with a 49 thousandths wall that'll go way on up to here, somewhere in here, with a hole, and I don't have that info right handy. Somewhere in here is a hole for a rosette weld, and also one down lower here.
to make that sleeved tube become part of the whole assembly. Now there is another method. If you're not, if your rudder isn't uncovered, you can do this AMOC by instead of the rosettes, there's actually bolts. So a bolt will go in here. Now it wouldn't be the prettiest thing to see, but hey, compared to having your rudder not match at all paint-wise, that's actually a pretty small compromise. And so that's going to save a lot of hassle for a lot of people, being able to do this alternative method of compliance for the AD. So I'll be doing that here soon. I've got to order up that piece of tubing that'll go inside that. It won't take very long to do otherwise. And then that'll be ready for cover. And the stabs are ready for cover. The elevators are ready. The other thing I wanted to mention, of course, is that I'm doing the Stewart system, because this airplane is actually owned by the Stewart system. And so there's a lot that's different about the Stewart system. And of course, there's a lot that's the same compared to the other systems that have been used over the years. The thing that I learned when I did the Super Cub, I learned this in advance from some people just telling me and reading it, that if you're going to do the Stewart system, you want to pay really close attention to the details, because there are some things that are done differently. And if you try to do it the way that the other systems are used, you're probably going to get frustrated or maybe even have some problems. The differences aren't huge, but they are differences. And so it's really important to follow procedure, and that's all really spelled out very clearly in their installation manual. And one of the things that works so well with this system is the glue. So that's what this is here in this gallon jug. And we'll go into great detail as we actually get started putting the fabric on. I'm not going to go into much detail on that now, but the glue is really nice to work with. It does some things. It just makes the job a whole lot easier. I'll be using the glue with this brush, and it's a water, I believe the glue is actually water-based. The polyurethane coats that you build, like the color coats and such, they are a full polyurethane, but they're waterborne, which is very different than water-based. And I'm not 100% sure if the glue is water-based or waterborne, but regardless, it will evaporate if you just leave the container open while you're using. So having a lid on the brush like that is a great way to keep the glue from drying out as you use it. And then there's a couple other variety of procedures. Again, we'll go over in the future, but the other thing is there's videos that were put out by the Stewart system guys 10, 15 years ago that are still on YouTube, and they are extremely useful. And in fact, because it's been 8 years since I've done any fabric work, I've been watching them as well to just refresh myself. And especially what I would suggest is if you do watch those videos, if you are either interested in the Stewart system or you're doing the Stewart system, the videos are extremely useful, especially after you get just a little bit of experience doing things. Then you go back and watch the videos again, and so many things that initially maybe just flew right over your head, now they make sense, and so you can get much better understanding. So I really, and I'll have the links there in the description for both the AD compliance here on the rudder and on the Stewart system videos. But the other thing I wanted to show real quick is, and if you watch those videos or if you've already seen them, it's really important that when you're actually putting the fabric onto the, like fabric on top of fabric, you have to wipe off the glue after you've put it on there, because it'll tack up pretty quickly, and if you have ridges in it and such, they'll show in the long run. So you don't want that to happen. So I use, instead of like the blue shop towels that are shown in the video, when I did the Super Cub, I used these just cheap paper towels, and in a small size like this. So it works really good because you can do a wipe, and then you can refold this and get several wipes even on just this little half of a half sheet, and then you just pitch those. And so, because I don't go over the, I don't use the area of a paper towel more than once. Make one pass and then you're done. So then you would flip it over, and then eventually you'd fold it the other way, and you can got a lot of surfaces there that you can actually use. And those are some of the important keys to making sure that the the finish, everything looks really, really good. And that's definitely the goal. And just to, of course, to remind you that the Super Cub that I did, which that was in 2017 and 2018, and that was the first time I'd done any fabric work since the 1990s. So that was a long gap, and it was the first time I'd used the Stuart system, and the airplane won a bronze Lindy up at Oshkosh. So if I can do it, honestly, anybody can do it. Again, the key is follow the instructions, and if you reach a point where you don't understand what's going on, get some help from somebody who knows, rather than making mistakes. So anyway, we'll be using this little iron, then I've got a big iron too. We'll go again over all that stuff once we really get started. But at least I'm excited because, yeah, tomorrow there's going to be some actual fabric work going on. So next video, next week, there'll be quite a few things to show. And I'm trying to think, when it comes to the fuselage, I'm probably going to focus on these small parts here for a little while so that I can continue to get some of the other things complete on the inside, or at least prepped to be complete. They may not be in when I do the covering of the inside of the cockpit, but I'd like to have those things already ready so that once that is covered, those pieces can go in. So there's some blasting and some painting to do. There's those floorboards to make and such. And also I will say that I put the fold down door and the window on temporarily and adjusted those. They fit really, really well. And I'm going to be fetching up some acrylic sheet here before long to be able to do the windows with new material, of course. So anyway, I guess there we go. We're absolutely making progress, and we're about to turn the corner here where it's really going to change the look when we start covering up these structures with that white Dacron. One last thing on that. So this is Seconite 102. So this is the mid-weight, somewhere around 2.7 ounces per square yard. Actually on the Super Cub I did a mix. I used, well, I should say this 2.7 ounce 102 is usable for most light aircraft, small aircraft, and by that I mean, I don't mean ultralights, I just mean Super Cub for sure, and even larger. But what I did on the Super Cub was I used some of the heavyweight fabric in some key areas to just give it some additional strength. But this entire airplane here as a J-3 is just going to get all the Seconite 102 fabric. And if you don't know, Stuart Systems doesn't make the fabric, they make the coatings that you put on the fabric. But the fabric is typically either the Stitz, polyfiber, or the Seconite. So, and it's a Dacron. One last thing, I guess, always with the last thing. If you don't know, the Dacron, one of the things that's so wonderful about it is once you glue it all in place, you use an iron, like a household iron. You can use a household iron. I've got a fancier one for this project, but it'll literally shrink up. About 10% is the maximum amount of shrinkage you can get. And that's how you take that loose structure that's been glued on and get it super nice and snug, drum tight basically. And then when you put all the coatings on and then finally some color, and then you have an extremely durable, lightweight, and beautiful surface for the outside of the airplane. And again, the big advantage, in my opinion, with fabric covered structures is that you can pull that fabric off like I've done with the wings and fix any issues and make those wings essentially either new again or certainly refurbished. Then you put that new fabric on and that airplane's good to go for 20, 30 years, maybe more. So it's a really nice way, I think, for airplanes to be constructed. So anyway, okay, we are making good progress and I'm going to keep at it, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.